Okay, it looks like we've got enough people already dialed in, so we'll make a start. Just before we go into the sort of main slides, just on the screen there, you can see just a few details around the use of Q&A and chat. If you could use the chat function for any technical issues you're experiencing, and the team will try and sort that out for you. If you could use the Q&A function for any questions in relation to the webinar, then we'll sort of store those up and we'll answer those questions at the end. And if the questions could be sort of related to specifically around the Green Recovery webinar that we're giving now, maybe more general about the process. If you've got any specific questions, it might be easier if we try and address those separately, because we might not have time to go into specifics about every scheme. But yeah, any questions around green recovery into the Q&A, tech questions into the chat function. Okay, just move on. Okay, so welcome to our Green Recovery webinar. So just to introduce myself, I'm Peter Aston. I'm the Primary System Design Manager for WPD. So our team covers new connections to 33 kV and above, as well as reinforcements and upgrades to the network as well. In the background, you can't see them at the moment, but I'm joined by Ian Sanford, who's the South Wales Primary System Design Team Manager, who's specifically joined us for this South Wales region webinar, as well as Michael Clark from our corporate comms team, who's helping with some of the questions. And in the background, we're joined by a helpful digital team. So thank you, Tally and Julie, for assisting us with that. So the whole thing's going to be about 45 minutes. So we'll have about 20 minutes on the slides to start with, and then about 25 minutes for questions at the end. So let's move on. So I appreciate a lot of you on the call probably know who we are, but I thought we'd just do a very quick introduction to WPD. So we are a distribution company that distributes power to about 8 million customers, homes and businesses across the 4 regions of East and West Midlands, South Wales and the Southwest. And we do that through a network of assets comprising of lots of cables, underground cables and overhead lines, and lots of substations, nearly 190,000 transformers that we've got across the region. So it's a large network, big network, and we're always looking to engage with our customers. So thank you so much again for joining us. So in terms of what we do, so we are a distribution network operator, or DNO. And historically, this diagram that's on the screen shows how we've delivered electricity in the past. So typically, electricity has been generated by large power stations that are then connected to the transmission system, and the power flows one way through the distribution system and down to end customers. So our 7.9 million customers all across our region, and that's been a typical model for many decades. We don't supply, so we don't buy or sell energy, and we're not a generator ourselves. We are specifically a distribution network operator. But we are changing, and we are in the process of integrating distribution system operator parts of our business. So with the introduction of generation technologies, like you can see there on the screen, at various voltage levels throughout our network, we're now experiencing two-way power flow. So not just going from the high voltage down to the low voltage, but the other direction as well, and often changing during the day. And with that becomes a requirement for us to be more smart and flexible. And that is the whole piece around distribution system operators, becoming smart and flexible with the way that we use these new technologies connecting into our network. So in terms of what we do, we've got the 5 main activities sketched out for you there in those pictures. The first one being keeping the lights on for all of our customers. And we do that through the second piece, maintaining equipment. A lot of what our staff do is out there maintaining circuit breakers, transformers, overhead lines, and so on, in order to try and prevent faults from happening. But of course, you can't prevent all faults from happening. So the third pillar of what we do is that when faults do occur, we go out and fix them as soon as we can. And our teams are very good at getting out and fixing faults quickly. The fourth thing that we do, which is really where our sort of webinar is focusing today, is really around connecting customers. So providing connections to small and large customers, upgrading the networks or building new ones. And then fifthly, around that sort of DSO type piece, we're starting to operate smarter systems to manage those two-way power flows and flexibility services and that sort of thing. Okay, moving more specifically into the green recovery, which is what you're here for today. We have launched the call for evidence. So we've been working very closely with Ofgem and the other distribution companies across the industry for quite some months now to try and draw up investment plans to boost the green growth. So to support the post-pandemic recovery with green growth, green jobs, supporting that net zero agenda of the governments as well. So from the 8th of February, we've launched our 6-week call for evidence, which is what we're here to describe to you today. So it's all stakeholders and technologies invited to participate with this. So to submit details of your project. So what we're really asking you to do, and we've got some more slides on this in a minute, is to go onto our website, fill in that consultation document, the questionnaire, give us information about the schemes that you've got that are interesting to you, to comment on the ones that we have already shown, which we'll show you in a little bit. The evidence that we gather, we will then be weighing up all of those different schemes against some core criteria, and the main criteria are shown there. First one is utilization. So how much capacity can we use from these projects in the near term? So in that respect, we're really looking here for projects that are shovel ready, as it's called, in the pipeline, ready to connect fairly soon, certainly within the next couple of years, particularly whereby things like finance, planning permission, landowner agreements and so on are all fairly well progressed. And so we're looking here at really issues where the network is perhaps holding up projects from being delivered. And so to be able to then utilize all of this capacity fairly quickly. We're also looking at deliverability. How quickly can this infrastructure and solutions be completed, as well as how much of the capacity is used. And then we're also looking for value for money. And around wider issues as well, sort of wider societal benefits as well. So what's WPD offering? Well, if you go onto our website, there's more details there. There's also a link on our website to the ENA's website, which has a whole raft of information on the green recovery. But essentially, there is up to 300 million that the government's making available across the country for this green recovery, of which WPD will get up to in the region of about 80 million, which results in up to about 20 million across our 4 license areas, in each of our 4 license areas, between now and into 2023. So we're looking across the next couple of years. And it's really about upgrades, green developments, green infrastructure that can be done. So it's changing the network, doing works to the WPD network that will enable these green developments to get connected faster than otherwise they would have done. So we've already identified areas of the network, which I'll show you on the map in a minute, where there is interest in low carbon technology projects, where there has perhaps been some network restrictions as well, and that investment that can potentially unlock additional capacity in those areas, or potentially will bring the network closer to where the third party interest is as well. And it's just to highlight, this is investment in the WPD network, so there won't be funding for actually customers' own projects per se, not on customer site, but on the WPD network itself, to help customers connect their sites quicker. So customers seeking connection, it will in the normal way pay their own sole use assets to connect to the network. So we are looking here about more about funding for upgrades and reinforcement further up the system to sort of free up that capacity. So moving on, this is just a shot of the map that's already on our website, which you may well have looked at already. So you can zoom in to that map if you go onto the website, and you can hover over the different areas, and it shows you sort of what primary substations and so on those shaded areas represent, and those the different sort of proposals behind those are different. So some of them are upgrading substations, so transformers perhaps. Some of them are upgrading overhead lines or cable circuits that run between different substations. It's just to say on that map, we haven't shown upgrades to the highest voltage network, the 132 kV network, simply because some of the 132 kV circuits, for example, cover such a big area, it would have just covered very, very large areas of the map shaded in, so you wouldn't have then seen some of the detail underneath that. But there are some other potential investments at 132 kV that we've got on the list as well. But equally, it could be these could be investments in small substations, distribution substations, as we call them, just that might be sort of on the corner of a street, or it could be overhead lines or cables. But specifically at 11 kV and upwards is where we're really looking for this investment. So what we're really, the question that we're asking you today and through our questionnaire is, have we got this right? So we've used our own intelligence around green developments that we're aware of, plus network capacity areas that are tight, and come up with these different areas. But are you aware of other areas? So we're looking for you to complete that questionnaire on our website, to give us the information we need, either supporting those areas we're already showing, or indeed providing us with additional areas for you to provide your own suggestions. In terms of how we're going to be assessing the evidence, we've got a number of different criteria. So when the call for evidence closes on the 19th of March, we'll then be using these criteria to score all the different schemes that we've got on the list, whether there were schemes that were provided by WPD, like we showed on the map there, or whether they're schemes specifically provided by you through the questionnaires. We'll be assessing all of them against the same criteria, and then trying to balance out which are the most effective schemes. So the sorts of criteria that we've got are shown in the table there. So, for example, customers having received quotations or budgetary quotations where there are high reinforcement costs, and where a scheme may not have gone forward yet because of those high costs, or local authority numbers of heat pumps and electric vehicles, or the local authority strategy suggests a future need, or this particular development may support local green jobs or green investment creation, that sort of thing. So they're the criteria that we're going to be using, and that we'll be then evaluating all of those different schemes against. Through the questionnaire, we've got other areas that we're sort of teasing out as well, like, for example, question 11 of the questionnaire is all around how does your specific suggestion fit in with the government's 10-point plan around sort of a green recovery. There's other things in the questionnaire. I think there's about 19 questions in the questionnaire, so it's quite long perhaps, but it's there to try and pull out as much detail as we can from you about all the different schemes that you're doing. And I think it's worth saying that schemes that aren't selected for green recovery, what we can do is we can use the information that we've got from you to help further develop our ED2 plans, so which is our next price control period that runs from 2023 through to 2028. There is a separate consultation out about that, but any schemes that don't make it through and get funding through green recovery, we will potentially look to put those into the ED2 plan as well. So in terms of timeline, what does that look like? Well, we launched the consultation on the 8th of February, so a couple of weeks ago. That is running through until the 19th of March, so about a month from now. When that closes, we're then going to be a month or so reviewing all of those responses, all of those schemes, and eventually through that process, we're going to end up with a shortlist, which will get approved effectively through Ofgem, and then around about mid-May time, we're going to be shortlisting and announcing the shortlisting of those schemes, and then we'll be starting work on them. So this is a fairly quick turnaround. So we're looking to do works in the next couple of years. So of course, we'll be starting that straight away once that's been approved. Of course, subject to normal lead times with plant procurement and that sort of thing. So what we're asking you to do, mentioned it a few times already, but we're asking you to go to our website. The address is shown there on the screen, and to complete the questionnaire for us. Do you agree with any of our highlighted areas? If you do, send us that sort of confirmation. If there's any areas we've missed, send us information about the sites that really impact you, that are ready, the sites that are ready to go, with fairly quick turnaround times to get these done. So we would prefer answers to come in via the form on our website. If that's not possible for you for whatever reason, as you can see on the screen, we've got email and paper submission options available to you as well. But if preferable, if possible, it would be great if you could fill in the form on the website. And don't forget, you need to go and do that by 19th of March. So you just got a month left to do that. So that brings us really to the end of the sort of formal presentation piece. So I think what we'll do now, we've got time now to go into questions. So I'm going to just open up to Mike Clark, who's going to just help to read through and sift through some of the questions. So Mike, over to you. Let's go for the first question.
Thanks, Peter. Hi, everyone. I'm Michael Clark from the Corporate Communications team, as Peter mentioned before. Please do keep sending the questions through. We'll try to get through as many of those as possible in the next 20 minutes or so. Peter, the first question has come through from Andy Seaman. Just trying to open up the question now. And the question is funding only available to those areas marked in green on the green recovery map?
No. So the map that we've got is just a starter for 10, really, Andy. It's simply there to say these are the areas that WPD has initially identified where we've got potentially restrictions, or where we know there are green recovery projects already underway. But what we'd like you to do is tell us of other areas that are relevant to you. So by all means, tell us through the questionnaire about other areas that aren't currently highlighted on the map.
Thanks, Peter. Second question came through a little earlier from Guy. I'm just trying to find that right now. 1 second. I'll come back to Guy in a second. There was another question that came through just now from Patrick Smart. Thanks for that, Patrick. He notices that a lot of South Wales isn't highlighted, and wants to know the reason why. Is that because the congestion problem extends up the transmission system, or is there another reason?
Well, I think it was, yes, you are right that there are some higher voltage issues, sort of capacity restrictions in South Wales. So there are lots of areas on the list that we haven't shown you simply because they were sort of 132 kV schemes, but there potentially are other areas. I mean, Ian, was there any thoughts you had on areas that weren't highlighted in Wales? I think it was probably a lot of it was to do with 132 kV issues, I imagine.
Yes, Pete. It's there are other areas as well that do have restrictions as such, but it is just a case of identifying a number of schemes where we believe the sorry, I don't know if you can see me. Yeah, where we believe we could do some good with this money. But as you said, the key really is, I think, is for people to submit their views as well. The list is a starter for 10, and it's just our initial view as to where some of that investment would go, based on where we know day to day there tend to be network constraints. But as you say, there are some 132 kV. If we were to put that on there, it would cover the whole map pretty much.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Ian. Thank you, Michael, as well.
No problem at all. Next question. Apologies to Guy Morrison. I was struggling to find the question before, but and I see you've got another one, Guy, so I'll get to that in a second. But Guy's first question was: if an EV infrastructure project on the LV connection requires a new substation that could be located on the boundary of private land with spare outgoing ways to the public highway, would this be still considered a sole use asset, or could it qualify under GRS?
I think it's one of those things that some of these very specific sort of questions, Guy, are quite difficult to answer, I guess, without knowing specifically the ins and outs. I mean, like we said, sole use assets are going to be predominantly funded by the customer. So could this be classed as a reinforcement? Yes, it could be. I think there are circumstances in which a transformer would be viewed as a sole use asset, and other circumstances in which a transformer would be viewed as a reinforcement. So I think the best thing to do is, in that case, I would put something into the questionnaire and just say, here's a potential scheme, and then we've got the option to sort of give it a little bit more of a detailed review afterwards. So, and the more information you can put in the questionnaire response, like postcode, grid reference, anything like that, then can help us pinpoint where you are, and we could do a little bit more investigation.
Thanks, Peter. Just to confirm to everybody and answer a couple of questions that we've had come through, we will be putting these slides from the webinar presentation onto our website. It will probably go on early next week. We're also going to be including all of the webinar videos on there as well, so you can refer back to those and share those with others who might not have been able to attend. And any other questions that spring to mind after this webinar, then please, you still can get in touch. If you email us at wpdgreenrecovery@westernpower.co.uk, we'll answer all of those questions as well. But yes, questions still coming in, so thank you for that. Guy Morrison, your second question. Is the process really for approval of specific shovel-ready projects, or a general call for evidence to identify areas for reinforcement?
So it's a good question. I think in terms of where the green recovery funding is going to go, it is going to go specifically to areas where there are projects more or less ready to go that can be delivered in the next couple of years. Because what we want to do is we want to do network, we want to make investment in the network that are then going to very specifically aid sort of green recovery schemes. If there are schemes that are sort of maybe further out in the future, I think we're still interested to know about those through this questionnaire, because it then helps to build a case for other investment works, and potentially if you say, well, look, you know, we've got such and such a development, EV chargers or whatever in a certain area, but even though you're not quite ready, there may be other people who are ready in the same area as you, and so your evidence is just giving more weight to a project that's going to be pushed forward. So what I would say is, please send us your information in, and then we can gather all that together and make and we can then sort of get an overall view of any specific areas where there's a real drive for getting this capacity available.
Thanks, Peter. I had another question come through from Andy Seaman, who has said, is the funding only for Western Power equipment upgrades? Does the funding cover any works on the customer side of the connection?
So that's easy to answer. It's just works on WPD's network, I'm afraid. Nothing on the customer side.
Okay. Also, thanks for getting back in touch again, Patrick. Will funding cover necessary enabling investments such as comms upgrades required for protection or for A&M purposes?
Yes. So essentially anything to do with the connection on WPD side, which could be you know, overhead lines, cables, transformers, but equally it could stretch into comms, A&M, anything like that, anything where we might need to make an investment to help release some capacity. So yes, it's not strictly limited to just equipment that carries the power itself, but yes, ancillary equipment as well would be covered, but again, equipment that's sort of owned and operated by WPD specifically.
Okay, next question's from Caroline Gilpin. For shovel-ready sites, would you consider EV sites that are not in planning where the site is stalled due to lack of grid?
Again, I know it sort of feels a little bit chicken and egg sometimes, some of this, doesn't it? Because, you know, I've seen developers say before, well, we can't proceed with anything because we've got grid capacity restraints, and so we haven't yet got planning. But what I would say on that is, if the grid capacity could be unlocked fairly quickly, do you think that there is a reasonable chance that you could then get planning, etc., in place within a sort of reasonable time period? And if the answer to that is yes, then I would say it probably comes under the sort of category of shovel ready. You know, but basically, you know, if you've already put a fair amount of work into this, and could then potentially go through that planning application reasonably quickly, then yes, I think that would also, you know, come under this bracket. So again, on those sorts of schemes, I would suggest, you know, please put them forward into the questionnaire. We'd love to see those schemes. That's exactly what we're trying to do here.
Okay. Patrick's been in touch to ask, are you interested in accepted connection offer schemes that are currently on hold due to grid upgrades, or only those that have not entered the formal application offer process? I think that's a similar question to one we've had earlier. Yeah,
so there is something on that. We've got a frequently asked questions piece on the website as part of the call for evidence documentation, and it does say in there that schemes that are accepted with accepted offers won't be eligible for this. So yes, their schemes that won't be included as part of this.
Great. Gareth Ellis's question is about the fact that there have been some network constraints in certain areas, which is why some projects haven't developed. So that haven't progressed those opportunities to shovel ready because there wasn't the network capacity. I guess the point around those, Peter, is that those are exactly the ones that we want to know about.
Yeah, yes, I think so. And again, even if you think your projects are maybe slightly further ahead than the timeline that the Green Recovery is specifically looking at, I think we would still like to know, because it does help them build a case for other investments, even if it's not going to be specifically Green Recovery funded. It might be something that we could use as evidence to help build into our business planning for the next price control period for ED2. So yeah, I think they are areas that we would like to hear from yourselves.
Great. Thanks for everybody for still sending the questions in. Next question comes from anonymous attendee. Following the announcement of the final areas in May, will you be able to provide updated budget estimates or formal quotes for projects in those areas based on the reinforcements being completed?
It's a good question. I think once the areas are finalised and and effectively those schemes have been pushed forward into our plan to get delivered, then if there were any budget estimates put in after that time, that we would then take account of that planned reinforcement in those budget estimates we put together. So yeah, I think that's a question of timing, really, and what we will be doing is once the shortlist is agreed and signed off, then we will be publishing that. We haven't quite yet worked out exactly what form that will get published, but we will be publishing the shortlist, and so you should then see which areas will be getting that funding, and there may be a slight delay after that in terms of it specifically working through our systems in order so that any budget estimates can then take account of that. But essentially, that's what we will end up doing. So I think the short answer is yes.
Thanks, Peter. Caroline has asked, is there a target generation connection that WPD is wanting to deliver for the £20 million?
There isn't any specific target. So we're not trying to facilitate a certain number of megawatts of generation through this. Equally, we're not trying to target specifically a certain number of EV chargers or heat pumps or anything like that. So we don't have a specific number in mind. The only specifics that we need to try and keep to are that this needs to be effective. So what we don't want to do is to do a very multi-million pound reinforcement scheme that then only benefits a few car chargers, for example. So that wouldn't be very effective use of money. So which is why we're trying to get this evidence through the questionnaires, so that what we can do is then say, right, this particular reinforcement scheme delivers a certain amount of megawatts, and we believe that this is going to then be used by either generation or demand or both, because certain reinforcements will of course benefit both demand and generation schemes. But yeah, no specific target.
Thanks, Peter. Another question has come in around the consultation for the ED2 investment works. So what I can do is share the link to the ED2 business plan with you. It's for those who've got pen and paper, it's westernpower.co.uk/BP1, and that's the draft business plan, which covers all of WPD's proposed activity between 2022 2023 and 2028. So it's not specific to the network investment works. It covers a broader range around customer service, customer vulnerability support, network resilience, that kind of thing. But I'll make sure that is shared with you all afterwards. Some other questions that we had come in from the other webinar as well, Peter, that I thought might be useful to bring up here for everybody. Is there a minimum scale of development that WPD is interested in as part of this call for evidence? There might be small scale installations which have cumulative impacts on the network.
Yeah, so we don't have a sort of minimum size in mind. It's likely that the reinforcements on the network would be sort of 11 kV and above. So that might involve installing a new distribution transformer, so 11,000 volt to 400 volt transformer, which is the type of substation you'd get on a street corner sort of thing. But in terms of the development size you tell us about, there isn't a specific minimum. The reason being is that I think I alluded to it a little earlier on one of the questions, that you know, that there could, even though your development might be quite small, there may be multiple developments looking to happen in the same area, and so if in that cumulative effect, we might say, oh look, there's a bit of a hotspot there as a result of a number of customers, in which case that might then be a good trigger to do something in that particular locality. So I would say that there isn't any sort of specific minimum, and that we will take into account everything that we get through the questionnaires that we get back.
Thanks, Peter. Another question that we had before was if there were multiple projects which that someone could provide evidence for, would you prefer a consolidated response or separate submissions for each project? Yeah, and
I think our preference would be separate submissions on the whole, because it then helps just for us when we're going through the process of trying to assign these questionnaire responses to specific geographic locations. Obviously, if you've got multiple schemes within a fairly small geographical area, you might want to lump some of those together. But otherwise, I would suggest that you give us responses separately, and then clearly mark some sort of geographical marker in that response, whether it's a postcode, what 3 words type, location, grid reference, that sort of thing.
Okay, I've probably got time for one final question, Peter. If there was 10 megawatts export import capacity at the nearest substation, but the project needed 50 megawatts, would the network be reinforced to accommodate only the 40 megawatts or possibly more?
Yeah, so this comes down to sort of need in the area from one point of view, and it comes down to equipment sizes on another point of view. So in terms of need, if there is only the need that's been identified for that additional 40 megawatts, then we'd only look to reinforce for that capacity. Clearly, if there was a good chance that there might be more than that 40 megawatts of capacity coming along, then we would look to invest something bigger to meet other requirements in the future. Equally, we do have specific sizes of kit that we install, so it's quite possible that if the next size of kit up doesn't meet 40 megawatts, we'd have to go to the size beyond that. So it might be that we naturally provide, I don't know, 60 megawatts of capacity anyway, simply because that's the smallest size of kit that we've got that actually provides for the capacity we need. So it's quite often the case when we do a reinforcement that there is additional capacity created above what's actually needed. So yeah, again, that'll be sort of site specific as to exactly what we do.
Great, thanks, Peter. Yeah, I think that's it. That's it for the questions. What I'll just confirm to everybody is that all of the questions and answers that have been posed through all the whole series of webinars, we've got one for each of our regions today and tomorrow, and we'll compile all of those and put them all on our website, and then each of you will get an email with a link to those, so you can see all the questions and answers that have been posed during these sessions. But that's it for the questions. So over to you, Peter.
Okay, so just very finally from me, I just want to say thank you very much for attending. Thank you for your questions. And just to say one last time, please go to our website. Please fill in the questionnaires for your schemes. That's really going to help us to direct the funding into the right places. Clearly 20 million per license area isn't going to cover everything, but we want your input to help us direct that funding into the right places. So that's all. Thank you so much for your time. And we'll obviously, like Michael said, we'll get around to answering as many questions as we can afterwards. So thank you, everyone.